My name is Ian, and I read a lot. Hi everyone, and welcome to my January reading wrap-up. I read 18 books in the month of January, so let's chat about it. I read 9 ebooks, 6 audiobooks, and 3 physical books. We started the month with a Katee Robert book, and I have been going through her Wicked Villains series and her Dark Olympus series. So the first book I read in January, or first book I finished in January, was The Beast by Katee Robert. And it's essentially a pseudo-retelling of Belle, Gaston, and Beast, and how they all get together. Belle needs to, her name is Isabelle in the book, needs to get back with her town's good graces, so she hires Beast and Gaetan. Gaetan in this book is Gaston. And they all have to work together, but Beast and Gaetan make a deal with Isabelle that for 2 weeks they'll do what she says, but for 2 weeks she has to do what they say in any way, shape, or form. So there's that. Like any Katee Robert book, if you've read any of her books, you know that it's very little plot and very much a lot of smut. So that was that. 3 stars for that one. Then I went into this insane paranormal monster romance called The Sacrifice by Emily Shore. And when I tell you this book is wild from start to finish, it truly is so wild. I started this book and wanted to DNF, but I couldn't. For some reason, the book kept drawing me in, and it was not a good book, let me tell you. Follows this gray, half-dead girl who is supposed to be the town's sacrifice, and she escapes, and she crosses into another world. But in the process of crossing into the world, she tries to kill this dragon. And once she crosses over, she is captured by this other dragon and this vampire, and she then has to heal the dragon she tried to kill because she has blood binding magic that can heal. And then the dragon she tries to kill decides she's his mate. And then the other people get involved, and it's just this weird story. I didn't really understand the plot. It was a wild story, but I read it all. 2 stars for The Sacrifice by Emily Shore. The other 2 Katee Robert books I read were Midnight Ruin and Dark Restraint. And these are part of the Dark Olympus series that I have been reading. And the books have low-key gotten worse as they've gone on in the series. I enjoyed the first couple ones, and the rest have just kind of went downhill for me. Whether she's trying to tie in a bigger plot into these books, I don't know. But anyway, Midnight Ruin follows Eurydice, Orpheus, and Charon. And truly, I could not tell you the plot of this book. It was polyamorous smut. Truly, that's all that it was. Couldn't tell you anything else. 2.5 stars for that one. And then we have Dark Restraint that follows Ariadne and the Minotaur. And I liked this one a little bit more because there was more of a plot. And Ariadne is forced to get into this fake marriage to help the city. And the Minotaur is trying to take down the bad guys. So it follows the 2 of them in the push and pull of their relationship because Ariadne doesn't want to be with him, but he wants to be with her, and it's this whole thing. So I enjoyed that one a little bit more, and 3 stars for that one. I read 2 TJ Klune books in the month of January, one being Love Song, which is a little short story novella type deal in Elizabeth's POV. If you've read any of the Green Creek series, you know Elizabeth is an important character. I don't want to give too much away if people haven't read them, but she is the mother figure of these books, and reading this book just gave me more insight to her character, and I really enjoyed that. 3 stars for that one. And I reread House in the Cerulean Sea before I go into Somewhere Beyond the Sea, and I just loved, and I listened to the audiobook again, and I love the characters. If you haven't read House in the Cerulean Sea, it follows Linus Baker, and he is a caseworker and gets this special assignment from the government to go to this house that has a bunch of different kids, a very eclectic sort of kids. And he goes to this house to observe and see how the household father figure, Arthur Parnassus, is doing with these kids. And along the way, Linus learns a lot about himself and about life and the kids. This book is wholesome. If you haven't read, I highly suggest. 5 out of 5 stars. And one of my goals this year is to hopefully complete, we'll see because there's a lot of books in this series, or in this universe, is the Rena Kent universe. Because I've seen a lot of people talk about the Legacy of God series, but I wanted to start from the beginning. So I read Cruel King, Steel Princess, nope, that's not the right order. Cruel King, Deviant King, and Steel Princess. Which follows, first book follows Aiden and, Levi and Astrid, and then Deviant King and Steel Princess follow Aiden and Elsa, and I'm currently reading the 3rd in that trilogy, Twisted Kingdom. And these are dark romance, high school bully romances, and they're a little hard to get through at times, but entertaining enough. And essentially the plots of all of these books are bad boy, sweet, innocent girl, and they're very possessive of them. I gave Cruel King 3.75 stars. I gave Deviant King 3 stars, and I gave Steel Princess 4 stars. The ending of Steel Princess into Twisted Kingdom, goop, gagged, and giggled, let me tell you. So we're slowly going through Rena Kent's books, and I will keep you updated on my journey. I read a few paranormal romances this month as well, and one of them was Kissing the Shark by C.D. Rachels. And I had a fabulous time reading this book. It is a shark shifter romance, and it follows Razorjaw, our shark, and Carlo, our human. And Carlo one day decides he wants to try and surf, and he is not very good at it. And Razorjaw saves him, and then realizes that Carlo is his mate. So he wants to work on the land and get to know Carlo more. So he decides he wants to work at the Marine Biology Institute that Carlo works at, and then tells all of his coworkers that Carlo is his mate. And the story goes from there, and it's such a fun time. Razorjaw is so sweet and so wholesome, and Carlo at first is a little prickly, but then as he gets to know Razorjaw more, he becomes really patient with him, and it's a sweet story. I highly recommend if you want to get into your shark shifter era. The other 2 paranormal romances I read were part of the Monstrous series by Lily Mayne, and I've been going through this series for a while now. I read books 4 and 5 this month, Gloam and Moth. And Gloam follows, what is his name? Gloam follows Rig and Gloam. And essentially, Rig has been observing Gloam for a long time because he's been at the the raider camp that Rig is stationed at. And Rig finds out that Glom is going to be leaving with this monster collector, and he wants to free Glom. So he goes with this collector to try to free him. And along the way, they develop a relationship, and the journey of the two of them is so sweet, so wholesome. And Moth follows Charlie and Moth, and Moth volunteers to go help find Kat, who is their missing leader of their camp. And Charlie agrees to go with him. Well, Moth is very closed off and is not a people person in the slightest, but Charlie wants him to have somebody to be with along the way. And so Charlie's very open, very, very extroverted. And so at first they don't really get along. But as they get to know each other along this journey to find Kat, Moth opens up, and Charlie is very patient with Moth. And I love Moth. I had heard was everyone's favorite in the series, and it did not disappoint. It is one of my favorites as well. I loved Charlie and the way he treated Moth, and I loved Moth's character development, and it just was such a good story. The slow burn of it all was so good. Another dark romance book that I read this month was an ARC at the time, but is now available. It's called Never Let Me Go by Lila Dane, and it is book 2 in the Inevitably You series, and you do have to read them in order. Book 1 is Someone Like You, and I highly recommend both of these books. Never Let Me Go, though, is very dark, has a lot of trigger warnings. If you need them, I believe they're at the front of the book, but it essentially follows Gavin and Beck, and they were friends when they were younger, and then something happens, and they then become enemies and rivals, and they're both on the wrestling team, and they always get paired together, and they just cannot stand each other because of something that happened in the past. And then Beck goes down a very bad rabbit hole. It does a lot of bad things, and Gavin saves him, or pulls him out of this deep dark hole he's in, even though he doesn't like him. And the story essentially follows that, and how Gavin takes care of Beck, and Beck doesn't want him to take care of him, but agrees to be in Gavin's care anyway. And the emotions I felt while reading this book were insane. And so if you want a really emotional dark romance, I suggest Never Let Me Go by Lila Dane. And on the flip side of that, I read a fluffy-ish book, and it is book 1 in a series by Serena Bowen. It's called The New Guy. And I read the second book, listened to last year, at the end of last year, and I loved it. But this is called I forget what the series is called, but it follows hockey players and how they find their true loves. The first one, The New Guy, follows Hudson, who is new to a hockey team, and he falls in love with the athletic trainer of the team. And because I read book 2, I knew kind of what that was going to happen. But still, some of the stuff in the story did surprise me. So I wanted to read that one first, reread the New Guy. Reread I'm Your Guy. And then the third book in the series comes out in March. So I love Serena Bowen's writing. Him, Us, and Epic are one of my favorite duology trilogies, however you want to look at it. Serena Bowen writes it with Elle Kennedy, and I love the way she writes her characters and the stories, and it's just so good. I highly recommend, if you haven't read or listened to any of those books. And last but not least, we have my 3 physical books that I read in the month of January. We're going to start with Never Been Kissed by Timothy Janofsky. And if you have been following my Instagram for a while, you know that I rant and rave about Timothy Janofsky's writing and books all the time. This was his first book, and I thought it was very sweet, very wholesome. Not my favorite of his books, but still, nonetheless, it follows Ren and how he accidentally sends emails to boys that he's almost kissed before, and one of them answers, and he then finds out he's working with him at the drive-in movie theater that Ren also works at. So the story follows the two of them. What is his name? Derek. So the story follows Ren and Derek and how they navigate their lives of being not together, but having an almost kiss and dealing with those relationships of growing up and finding yourself and dealing with new relationships and stuff like that. This was a 3.5 for me. Still cute, not my favorite, but I loved it nonetheless. Then we're gonna talk about this book that I adore. It is my favorite book of the year so far, and if you, again, have been following my Instagram, you know that I gave this a whole Spotlight Sunday on, and that is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. And look at the tab. I don't know if you can tell. Yeah, I tabbed a lot of this book, and I love it so much. It follows Clementine and Iwan, and Clementine inherits her late aunt's house, and it is a magic house. And Clementine doesn't really know how magical the house is. But one day she comes home from her job and she finds Iwan in her house. And then she realizes that she is thrown back 7 years in the past. And that is when Iwan is living in this house at the time, because her aunt lent it to him in the summer. It is so good. The quotes, the imagery, the color descriptions of this book, I ate this book up. I loved this book, and I haven't really stopped thinking about it since I read it. So if you haven't read, I'm late to the game, but if you haven't read The 7-Year Slip, I highly suggest you do so. And last but not least, this last one snuck right in at the end of the month. I managed to finish it before the month ended, and that is A Little Bit Country by Brian D. Kennedy. And I had been wanting to get into Brian D. Kennedy's works, and I have had this on my bookshelf for a while, so I dove right in. And it follows Emmett and Luke. I just read this book. I don't know why I lost their names. Emmett and Luke, and Emmett is an out gay guy and wants to be a famous gay country singer. So he starts working at Wanda World, which is a playoff on Dollywood, and then he meets Luke, who is an aspiring cook and is trying to help his family who are struggling financially. And Luke is not out, but a relationship forms between the two of them, and you see kind of how teenagers deal with the struggles of coming out and the scariness of coming out and wanting to live your true self, but also being scared of what your family and what the world will think of you. And it's very sweet. I really enjoyed this one, and I cannot wait to read Brian D. Kennedy's other book, My Fair Brady, which is a play on My Fair Lady. If you've managed to stay this far, thank you. I hope you enjoyed me ranting and raving and yapping about all these books that I read this month. I cannot wait to see what the month of February brings, and I hope you have all had a great month of reading. Let me know your favorite book of the month, and I will catch you next time. Bye, everyone.